There was a lot of talk this Memorial Day, the greatest day in racing, but for NASCAR and Kyle Larson fans, I think it was a Memorial Day to forget. We'll see what these two think as well. Welcome to Stuck in the Catch Fence. Welcome. I'm your host, Ryan Peters. I'm joined by Travis Butt and Joe Spillman, two unapologetic Kyle Larson fans who were waiting all day Sunday and actually the previous few weeks for what was supposed to be one of the greatest days in racing, not only from a motorsports perspective, but also from their fandom perspective. And unfortunately, Mother Nature had a role to play in it. NASCAR had a role to play in it. Rick Hendrick and Kyle Larson had a role to play in it. And to me, it all burned up in flames or drowned in the water, however you want to look at it from that standpoint. A lot of buildup, a lot of things that had to go into play, and it seems like the worst case scenario ultimately ended up happening. And for NASCAR, for Kyle Larson, probably not so much for IndyCar. I think this is going to be probably a day that a lot of people will remember as something that did not go well. Travis, is that a wrong way of looking at it to start out, or how are you looking at what happened this weekend?
I mean, I think you just hit it perfect. It was just a big bust. When you do this stuff, you understand that weather can be an issue. You got to have a lot of stuff work out, right? You got to have no traffic in the air. You got to have no weather. You got to have a lot of pieces of this pie work out, and the biggest factor of everything was the weather, and that's what caused everything. And when you do this stuff, you know what you're going to get into. But it's just one of those things where it came out to be a big bust. Like you said, it's something to forget.
Joe, do you think this weekend was a big bust?
It was an emphatic bust for Kyle Larson. And I mean, we could get into a whole bunch of stuff. I commend Kyle Larson for trying to do what he did. And like you said in the opening, I'm an unapologetic Kyle Larson fan. I think the guy is the greatest, spectacle in racing himself. I think if you put four wheels on something, I think he's going to be able to figure out how to drive it and compete. Had some mistakes yesterday, obviously, but at the end of the day, for people that are Kyle Larson fans, you're right. We've been literally a whole year waiting for yesterday.
14 months we were waiting for this.
Yeah. I mean, since we watched him get fitted for, his driver's seat 14 months ago, and it's like, kind of paying attention to it, watching his testing. And really, I think everybody, like, I had reasonable expectations about Saturday, right? Or Sunday. I didn't expect him to compete for a win in the Indianapolis 500. I thought that if he could finish this, he could finish with a decent run. Top 10 would have been great. But it was more about, can you complete the harshest day in oval auto racing, which is 500 miles in Indianapolis and 600 miles in Charlotte. Can you complete that and compete in both? And that's really what I was looking forward to. Once it was known that he wasn't going to actually be able to do the double, I was out, man. I was like, there's no point in doing the 500. So yeah, let down.
Yeah, and I think that's a good standpoint from, I think, a lot of NASCAR fans. The issue that I have, and some of this is on Kyle Larson, almost all of it is on NASCAR. And when I say some, I feel like Kyle Larson does what he thinks is best for himself. And I never, ever have fault when somebody does that. I think that NASCAR pays his bills, but other type of racing, anything that he can get behind to challenge himself is what motivates him. So I don't doubt Kyle Larson for that, but putting himself in the situation where he decided to choose the Indy 500 over NASCAR, to me, put NASCAR in a situation which they deserve, because they always put themselves in a situation to do something stupid. And more often than times, they never disappoint. I think half the time the people running NASCAR also ran Jeb Bush's campaign in 2016. I can't confirm that, but I do feel that way. So it seems like, in my eyes, IndyCar benefited from this immensely. They got all of the recognition. They got all of the extra audience, and NASCAR got nothing. Joe, do you feel the same way? Is that off topic?
No, I think you're 100% correct. I mean, I'm going to watch the Indy 500 anyway because I'm an IndyCar fan. That's a whole other topic. Run your damn races on Saturday, jackasses. But that's a whole other topic. Travis over here, Travis isn't an IndyCar fan. I mean, he stated that. Travis watched the Indy 500 yesterday because Kyle Larson was running it. And that's it. And
I missed the beginning of the Coca-Cola 600 to watch the Indy 500.
Never would have NASCAR fans watched the 500 yesterday because Kyle Larson ran it. NASCAR fans watched the 500 when Tony Stewart ran it because NASCAR fans we're all very conceited being NASCAR fans, thinking that we have the top of the line form of auto racing and our drivers can go compete against anybody in the world. And I truly believe that in any form of oval racing. I truly think that NASCAR is the premier oval racing circuit that has ever existed. And if you put a NASCAR driver in any car racing around an oval, they're going to compete. There might be a learning curve, but that's why NASCAR fans are going to watch it. And they're going to watch one of the sport's most popular drivers in Kyle Larson compete in that. So the Indy 500 benefited immensely from having Kyle Larson. I mean, they're showing Kyle Larson running in 18th place as the main camera feed when there's a battle for the win going on. So I mean that tells you how much he meant to the Indy 500 and competing in it yesterday.
So is that a black eye, Travis? Whenever NASCAR has his point star, the guy currently leading in points, the guy that's won a championship, he's able to move the needle that much whenever he decides not to come do his day job. Is that a black eye for NASCAR? Does that put NASCAR down?
I think there was just so much at stake, right? And I think it goes back to like we talked about, like, from our standpoint, it's just such an easy decision. Go run NASCAR. That's what you do. But there was just so many things involved. I think you got to look at IndyCar and you look at the team he was running for, right? Aaron McLaren. They had a chance to put Tony Kanaan through a veteran course to be able to run Sunday, and they chose not to. That was their only backup plan. They said they didn't have another plan. They said he was going to be Tony Kanaan or Kyle Larson. Those were the only two people racing. So when, Aaron McLaren didn't put Tony Kanaan through that stuff, it was like, okay, like Larson's going to be running this. Like, there's no other choice beside this. Money, right? I don't know what it costs I can tell you what maybe a NASCAR is. Someone gave $1 million proposition to run an IndyCar race for an Indy 500. No idea. I mean, that's a lot of money to run. I think NASCAR was probably a little disappointed. They said, like, okay, like you're going to go run that over us, but you also look at, okay, we have 36 of these races compared to the Indy 500 is just one race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like something that, how often are you going to be able to do this? You got an opportunity to go do that. You can go run the Coke 600 probably for the next 20 years, right? Or however many years he has left. With the Indy 500, you don't know the next opportunity. Yeah, does he have a 2-year deal? But Larson's even said, there's still some paperwork that's involved with that. So is it a black eye for NASCAR? Maybe a little bit, but I think even talking to some people that make fun of me for loving NASCAR as much as I do, they even said I'm going to go watch the Coca-Cola 600 now because I know Larson's going to do the double. Obviously he didn't, but some of these people said that's kind of cool that he's going to run that and try to do that. So there's just a whole, I guess, more of a respect thing, but I wouldn't call it a black eye. I would just say that NASCAR was probably a little disappointed. You wanted a king size candy bar, but you only got the mini size candy bar. Right. And I think that's what NASCAR probably feels a little bit.
We didn't even get a candy bar.
Joe, have you ever been pantsed? Do you remember that? Pantsed? You ever was standing there in middle school? And, somebody just pulled your pants down out of nowhere, and you're the one that's just standing there like, what just happened?
Well, I thankfully admit that's never happened to me.
Okay.
Probably because in my younger days I used to be a bit of a hothead, so that probably deterred somebody from pantsing me.
That makes sense. Sense. A lot of guys on the football team were getting pantsed.
Yeah. But yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I feel like NASCAR got pantsed. I think this is a huge issue. If I'm in NASCAR, that I'm sitting here going, okay, we're going to let IndyCar borrow our star. All right. So it's kind of like, to me, if you're in, let's say you're in wrestling and John Cena is the headliner. Because why is John Cena the headliner? Because he's one of the best in the world. Kyle Larson's one of the best in the world. You guys have argued he's the most popular driver in the sport, regardless of what the poll says. Based upon what we see with our eyes and ears, we both agree, all three of us agree, that we think Kyle Larson is the most popular driver in the sport. I honestly don't think Chase Elliott gets the same level of recognition in IndyCar if Chase Elliott was to run this versus somebody like Kyle Larson. Why? Because nobody would think Chase Elliott has an opportunity to compete. We don't feel that way with Kyle Larson. We think that he has a chance to compete. Kyle Larson proves he has a chance to compete. So we let our best star get borrowed. The John Cena gets, say he wants to wrestle in AEW. You guys know what that is? Anybody heard of AEW? They have $20 tickets, okay? They show half the crowd, but they have a pay-per-view that day. Well, WrestleMania is that night, and John Cena just says, I want to help these guys out. I want to help them get some recognition, and then he doesn't show up for WrestleMania. So to me, NASCAR let them borrow their star, and then when it's like, hey, it's got to be one or the other, he decided to screw his day job, say, nope, this is my chance to do this. I don't care. I don't care about NASCAR right now. He's on his right to do that. Why? Because he was given the backup from Rick Hendrick, who pays his bills. He is the one that cuts the paycheck, not NASCAR. Rick Hendrick does. And then NASCAR goes, I guess we're going to have to deal with it. And what's that going to be? That's going to be a waiver. We'll talk about that here in a second. But if I'm NASCAR, I'm sitting here going, we're trying to make ourselves back to what we were in the early 2000s. We're trying to do everything we can to get our recognition, and our biggest star just gave us the biggest middle finger on the biggest stage possible. I think the Coca-Cola 600. This is a crown jewel.
Well,
that then itself, NASCAR didn't take it seriously that night, and we got screwed out of that. So
yeah, and I think you look at from the standpoint if Larson misses the Indy 500, right? So he goes, hey, I'm not saying it. There's rain. I'm going to go race NASCAR. I think NASCAR would get even a worse look by having the whole thing of like, well, NASCAR made him come over here because of the damn waiver system. And then that's why NASCAR is just awful, because NASCAR doesn't make any sense by doing this waiver stuff. I also look at the standpoint of like, I don't know. I just see the point of, like, it's a one time a year event. There's IndyCar has one crown jewel event, and that's the whatever that's the Indy 500. NASCAR has what, 4, 5? You got the Daytona 500, you got the Brickyard 400, you have the Southern 500, you got the Coca-Cola 600, and then what's another one? Is there 4? Yes, 4 crown jewels.
This is my crown jewel. It's the 600-mile race that we don't do but once a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean, though. I look at a couple different standpoints, but it's just.
How do you look at it, Joe?
A 600-mile and a half, by the way, which is incredibly taxing on drivers. And but I think, though, I think, to be fair, that we are looking at this a little short-sighted as NASCAR fans, as Kyle Larson fans. I don't think that we're recognizing, though, that NASCAR was probably looking to get a ratings bump, not only being the Coca-Cola 600, but how many strictly IndyCar fans? There's how many 100,000 people, 300 and some thousand people were at Indianapolis Motor Speedway yesterday. However many millions watched. How many of those are tuning in to see the Coke 600 that don't normally watch NASCAR just to watch Kyle Larson do both of them? So, this was, I don't think that they were completely pantsed. I think that they got the short end of the deal. I mean, I think that IndyCar, the Indianapolis 500, we're going to benefit more as far as viewership and bringing people in. That NASCAR was going to benefit anyway, but they were looking to benefit from this as well. And I think that we have to take that into account as well, that they were hoping on some more viewership out of this deal as well, I think.
Yeah, and look at this standpoint. Think about who knew that Robbie Gordon did it 3 years in a row. I don't remember that. Think about the year that Kurt Busch did it. Like, I remember watching, and that was one of the few Indy 500s that I watched, and I'm thinking, they didn't even show Kurt Busch throughout the show. They didn't even show him hardly. He finished 6th in the Indy 500, and he got shown a few different times, right? Because he was rookie of the race and this and that. And then you look at, like, the needle mover with Larson, and I feel like this was just a way bigger deal.
Well, I don't think anybody's done it except Tony Stewart that people legitimately thought had a chance to win both races.
I agree.
And that's the biggest draw of that Kyle Larson, if he doesn't make a couple mistakes yesterday, if he doesn't speed down pit road, if he doesn't have a bad restart, which he recovered from the bad restart, but if he doesn't speed down pit road, barring anything else that happened, he's competing for a win. He's finishing in the top 5. He's at least top 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
but think about Dixon. He was in front of Dixon the whole day, and Dixon ended up what, 4th?
Right. He's competing for a top 5 at the Indy 500. He's competing for a win, and then he's flying to Charlotte to compete for a win. But like I said, at the end of the day, when you're a NASCAR driver, you're in a points race, you're in a championship race, and you can't complete the double because that's what you're there for. I think the wrong choice was made yesterday. Bar none, he should have been at Charlotte.
And I think too, Joe, you get a casual audience with the Indy 500. There's no doubt about it. Why is that? Because more people attend the Indy 500 than actually watch on normal Sundays. You yourself said that if you don't have Peacock, it's really hard to find IndyCar because they do a horrific job marketing.
Terrible.
So you're essentially trying to get the diehard group to watch a little bit more, which is about the equivalent of a decent truck race on any given Sunday. But you're trying to get that casual fan to move over. The non-Indy or NASCAR fan to move over. And I get that. My issue is with NASCAR, which I've had plenty of them before, is that it doesn't take itself seriously. It makes its own rules up. It does whatever it wants at any given time. And if Formula One, like say, I don't know, Kimi Räikkönen decided if he was still running in Formula One that he wanted to run in the Indy 500. If Kimi Räikkönen in Formula One was like, I don't think I can make it back. Is that okay? Formula One said, no, go F yourself. We're bigger than Kimi Räikkönen. NASCAR's not doing that. Mm-hmm. And there's a part of me that thinks because it doesn't operate like a respectable organization. It makes up fines. It says, Ricky, you can punch that guy. It's going to cost you $75,000. We're going to make millions off of it. Like the inconsistencies and the stupidity from it is always going to be there with NASCAR because I don't think that it runs itself the way it should, the way a proper business should. And then to just put a horrific bow on top of this, we get the Coca-Cola 315 that we didn't get to finish. Our part, like we did our part. Us NASCAR fans, we did our part. We watched the Indy 500. Me and Travis watched it. We normally aren't going to dive into it, but I watched it. I gave up the beginning of the Coca-Cola 600 to watch it. So NASCAR, I'm like, hey, I did my part for Motorsport Day. You do your part. Entertain me for 600 miles. We got a little bit of rain. That happens. We're used to dealing with that. That's part of it. You then call the race after we wait for 2 hours. You give us no indication at all that the race is going to be called. Actually, you tell the guys to get close to their cars because we're going to be running it anytime soon. Videos come out. Joe, you've seen them, that the track looks dry. We've seen the radar. There ain't shit till 3 a.m. We've already invested hours into this day, and you took what was supposed to be hours. We didn't get it. Kyle Larson fans at Charlotte didn't get it. There are people at Charlotte that bought tickets. I'm sure if they watched it, there's people that bought tickets just to see Kyle Larson compete his 1,100 laps. And NASCAR, there you go. If you want to give that guy a shout out, the TikTok guy?
I do. So last night I'm scrolling on TikTok waiting for the race right when they called it about 12:30. This TikTok channel, and I guess these guys have a podcast named Fast Car /Living, and that's FASCAR /Living. That's their TikTok channel. They were down there live streaming some of their partying going on. They were camping in the infield. They go live at 12:30 to show the track, and it's almost completely dry. And, they're just kind of dumbfounded as, They just called it because they said there's humidity in the air. And I mean, you could clearly see the track in the video. It's completely dry. I mean, it's like, what are we doing?
Joe,
But
would you have stayed up to 2 a.m. to watch that NASCAR race?
I would have stayed up till 4 a.m. to finish that.
Travis, would you
I
have stayed up till at 2 a.m. to watch that NASCAR race?
I think based off my text to you guys, I think I would have stayed up till the whole day to watch, and that's what we talked about. Like,
would you be upset if
I do it
NASCAR
every
changed
year.
its rule and
I
we
don't
watched the
watch
race
F1.
today?
I don't watch
Here's
F1, but
what-
every year, go ahead.
No, here's the rule. It's like you guys thought, like we said, but it's past halfway. You can't run the next day. What the hell? We were going to run the next day, technically at 1 a.m. It's the next day still. So what do we, we started the day on a Sunday and, finished it on a Monday morning. I just look at NASCAR had a hell of a good chance. I mean, a terrific chance to save the whole Larson thing. They had so many good storylines during that race. You had Justin Allgaier running 12th or 13th in a car he's never been in. You had Kyle Busch back and forth. You had Reddick, who started, almost got a lap down, got it back. He's running 3rd and 4th. You had William Byron pass a car through the infield. You had
Passing the turf.
You had so many great storylines. You're gonna have Kyle Larson, arguably your face right now, gonna start in the back with a fast car that was gonna mow through people, and then you went humidity. We're done. That's like saying that. I mean, that's like I don't even know what to say.
What the hell does humidity have to do with anything? You can't run a car when it's humid outside.
I get it. I mean, I look at a standpoint of my race car. When it is humid outside, it sweats, right? It's like a pop can, right? You drive a pop can, humidity and stuff on the outside makes it condensation, makes it sweat again. I get what they're saying. I do, but it's like any rainstorm, right? It gets super humid after it rains because you have all those particles that settle back down and the ground rises back up. You wait 25 minutes, that goes away. It cools back off, right?
Because we seriously run races after rainstorms all the time.
Larson got there at 9:30, right? And that's when the rain delay happened. So 9:30, 10:30, 11. They called the race at 11:45. So you're looking at it. We waited. I sat on my couch, did some paperwork, watched all the radioactives for
That's a good point.
2.5 hours to them to have Mike
to a
Jordan
show that
come
won't
on,
be there now.
To Mike Jordan come on and say, well, we're blah, blah, blah. Look at the rain forecast. Oh, by the way, we just called the race. What are we doing? They told pit crew members to start putting the pit stalls back together. They told them to start getting their car ready. They were going to do all this. Larson got called. He was on his pit stall having a debrief when the race got called.
Yep.
And that's what we dealt with. NASCAR could have made a hell of a decision I get it. When they had a good audience, no, people went to bed, right? I had to get up at 7 o'clock this morning, but I was going to stay up until, like you said, Joe, 4 o'clock. But you had a chance.
People had a 4-hour delay, and all of them came back for the Indy 500.
And I look at,
they were all going to come back.
I was going to go to the race. I was going to go to that race, and I decided not to because I had stuff. I couldn't imagine sitting at that track for 2 hours waiting to Kyle Larson's here. We're going to have a hell of a race. We're going to finish this. This is going to be wild. And then you go, humidity. See you guys. Thanks for coming. We're gonna call it the Coca-Cola 315, right? So
they need to change the rule anyway. I mean, I think half the race is a little absurd anyway. I mean, I think we need to talk about that too, and that could be probably a good topic for a different show. I mean, half the race is not the race. I mean, let's try 80%. Let's make that the standard.
Well, let's make stage 2. So I mean, it's I don't know.
You guys. I think a lot of you guys aren't considering that they would have had to drive all the way back to where their team headquarters is at. Yeah. That's at
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
Oh, it's not halfway across the country. It's in their backyard. Oh,
it's like we talked about. If it was California or if it was Arizona, I get it. I would have not said. I wouldn't have been mad. Even if Kyle Larson was doing the double in Arizona, I'd been like, you know what? I get it. Teams got to get home. No, they're driving. Hendricks is literally on the backside of the backstretch. They got to drive 5 minutes.
Most fans drove further to get to Charlotte to watch the race than the actual teams drove to participate in the race. And I think a lot of them would have agreed. We came here to watch history of Kyle Larson attempting history, and they got nothing. It's like they went out to dinner and they said, I'm sorry, all we have is ice water. Matter of fact, we just ran out of ice cubes. It's just such a sour taste, and it's like us NASCAR fans. We're always the ones screwed. You know, the IndyCar fans got their race. They got to watch Kyle Larson. NASCAR fans didn't get all of their race. We didn't get to watch Kyle Larson. We don't get horsepower because that costs too much money, but we have to fork out to go drive to watch your product, and you don't give us all of that. NASCAR, again, it just gives its fans the middle finger too often than not, Joe.
Yeah, let me ask you this. It's just throwing this question out there, more rhetorical. When's the last time we all three sat here and said, good job, NASCAR, great decision?
The Clash, when they decided to run it instead of let it get rain delayed the day before. Okay. Whenever it just a few minutes time, they're like, you know what, everybody comes in free, we're going to run it tonight. And it's like, hey, that makes sense. let that you did your fans a service. Holy, yeah, good job. And then they're like, oh, but yeah, that we get 10 piles of dog crap because we did that one good thing. I mean, but honestly, that's it. But before that, Joe, couldn't tell you. I have no idea. We get the worst. And again, we got a few minutes here, but we get the worst racetrack to finish the year. We don't get the racetrack that we all love. We don't get horsepower because that costs them too much money, even though they don't care about how much money it cost us. Again, and it's like everybody got to play with their gifts at Christmas, and then we found out that we were the Who's and the Grinch came. Yep. And we're like, what the hell? We don't have any presents. And, you know, it just feels too often that NASCAR puts themselves in that situation to screw its fans, and it did it again. And we'll have a separate video where we talk about the waiver and the situation they put themselves. I know we have some disagreements upon if they should accept that or not. I think they're all valid points, and we'll talk about that because guess what? NASCAR put itself in a really bad situation. Now when it comes to this waiver rule or non-rule or possible rule, I don't know the rules. It's like, whose line it is it anyway? You know, NASCAR says the points don't matter because we make it up as we go.
Yeah.
But gentlemen, Travis, Joe, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us. More importantly, hopefully you guys are having a good Memorial Day. I put out a post. The only thing I ask you to do on this day, watch the 21 gun salute, listen to taps, think about the 22 service members that every day give up their lives. The battlefield, once they leave it, it stays with them. We would not be here if it wasn't for the sacrifices and everything that's done by our service members. So remember, it's not just a 3-day weekend so you can eat hot dogs and hamburgers. It is all on the back of our heroes that wear the uniform. So for Joe Spillman, Travis Buck, my name is Ryan Peters. Have a wonderful Memorial Day, and we'll catch you in the next video.